What is consciousness, and how does subjective experience emerge from physical matter? Consciousness is perhaps the most intimate yet mysterious aspect of our existence. It's the inner light that allows us to experience the world, feel emotions, and know that we exist. Yet, its nature remains one of science's greatest puzzles. At its core, consciousness is our ability to have subjective experiences, the feeling of what it's like to see a sunset, feel pain, or fall in love. These experiences seem fundamentally different from physical matter. While we can observe brain activity, we cannot directly observe someone's subjective experience. This leads to what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. How do physical processes in our brain create subjective experiences? When neurons fire in particular patterns, how does this create the taste of chocolate or the sensation of joy? This gap between physical processes and subjective experience seems unbridgeable. Modern science shows us that every conscious experience correlates with specific brain activity. Yet, correlation doesn't explain causation. We still don't understand the mechanism that transforms neural activity into conscious experience. This is like knowing that a TV's circuits correlate with the images we see, but not understanding how the circuits create the actual pictures. The mystery deepens when we consider that consciousness might be fundamental to reality itself, rather than just an emergent property of complex brains. Some philosophers suggest that consciousness might be a basic feature of the universe, like space and time. Most profoundly, consciousness challenges our materialistic worldview, suggesting that reality might be more mysterious and complex than we imagine. It raises the possibility that subjective experience is as fundamental to reality as objective physical matter. Do humans truly have free will, or are all our decisions predestined by our prior causes? The question of free will strikes at the heart of human identity and moral responsibility. It asks whether our choices are truly our own, or merely the inevitable result of previous events, like dominoes falling in a predetermined sequence. On one side, our entire experience of life seems to confirm free will. We feel we make genuine choices, weigh options, and could have chosen differently. This sensation of choice feels fundamental to our existence and forms the basis of moral responsibility. However, science presents a challenging perspective. Every event in the physical world appears to be caused by previous events, following natural laws. Our thoughts and decisions arise from brain activity, which follows these same physical laws. If our brains operate according to physical causation, how can our decisions be truly free? This creates what philosophers call the compatibility problem. And can free will exist in a deterministic universe? Some argue that free will is compatible with determinism if we define it as the ability to act according to our own motivations, even if those motivations are themselves determined. The problem becomes even more complex when we consider quantum mechanics, which suggests that some events at the atomic level are truly random, but Random events don't necessarily give us free will, they just add an element of chance to our determined actions. Most profoundly, the free will question challenges our concepts of moral responsibility and personal identity. If our actions are predetermined, can we be truly responsible for them? Or does responsibility exist at a practical level, regardless of philosophical determinism?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
Our experienced reality objective and independent, or is it shaped by our perception? Reality appears solid and objective, existing independently of our observation. Yet deeper examination reveals a more complex picture, where the line between objective reality and subjective perception becomes blurry. Our experience of reality comes entirely through our senses and mental processing. Colors, sounds, and tastes don't exist as we experience them in the external world. They're interpretations created by our brain. What we see as a red apple is actually our brain's translation of specific wavelengths of light. Modern physics further complicates our understanding of objective reality. Quantum mechanics suggests that at the smallest scales, reality behaves in ways that defy our common sense understanding. Particles exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed, suggesting that observation itself plays a role in determining reality. Our cultural and personal backgrounds also shape how we perceive reality. Different cultures can have fundamentally different ways of understanding time, space, and causality. This raises profound questions about the nature of truth and knowledge. If our experience of reality is so deeply influenced by our perceptual systems and cultural frameworks, can we ever access true, objective reality? The deepest insight might be that the distinction between objective and subjective reality is itself a human construct. Reality might be neither purely objective nor purely subjective, but something more complex that transcends this division. What makes a person remain the same weight as they were when oxygen is hovering in the atmosphere and the world is a back of some kind? It's all boring. The puzzle of personal identity challenges our most basic assumptions about who we are. Every cell in our body is replaced over time. Our memories and personalities change, yet we consider ourselves the same person throughout our lives. Physical continuity can't fully explain personal identity. If we gradually replace every part of a ship, is it still the same ship? Similarly, our bodies undergo complete cellular replacement, yet we maintain a sense of being the same person. Memory and psychological continuity seem crucial to identity, yet they're also problematic. We forget much of our past, and our personalities can change dramatically. Some philosophers suggest that identity is more like a story we tell ourselves, a narrative that connects different moments of our existence into a coherent whole. The question becomes even more complex with future technologies like consciousness uploading or teleportation, if we could copy all our memories and personality to a computer, would that copy be us? Perhaps the most profound insight is that personal identity might not be an all-or-nothing property, but rather a practical concept we use to navigate life. The self might be more like a process than a fixed entity. How can complex emotions and thoughts arise from physical brain processes? This question explores the fascinating bridge between physical matter and mental experience. How can electrochemical signals between neurons create the rich tapestry of our inner life, our hopes, fears, memories, and dreams? Modern neuroscience shows clear correlations between brain activity and mental states. Different emotions activate specific brain regions, and we can increasingly predict thoughts based on neural patterns. The complexity is staggering. Our brains contain roughly 86 billion neurons, each connecting with thousands of others, creating a network more complex than all the world's computers combined. Emergence theory suggests that consciousness and complex thoughts arise from the collective behavior of simpler components, just as wetness emerges from water molecules. The relationship between physical and mental might be fundamentally different from what we imagine. Rather than one causing the other, they might be two aspects of the same underlying reality. The deepest insight might be that our traditional categories of physical and mental are inadequate for understanding this relationship. Has there inherent meaning to life, or do we create our own purpose? This fundamental question has haunted humanity throughout history. It asks whether meaning exists independently of human consciousness, or if we must create meaning in an inherently meaningless universe. Traditional views often found meaning in cosmic purpose, gods, destiny, or universal order. These views provided ready-made answers, but raise questions about free will and personal authenticity. Existentialist philosophers argue that life has no inherent meaning, but this very absence gives us the freedom to create our own meaning. Science reveals a universe that appears indifferent to human concerns, operating according to impersonal physical laws. Yet the very fact that conscious beings emerged might itself be significant. Some argue that meaning comes from relationships, achievements, or contribution to something larger than ourselves. The profound insight might be that the dichotomy between inherent and created meaning is false. Meaning might emerge from the interaction between conscious beings and reality. Can we ever know anything with absolute certainty, or is all knowledge probabilistic? The quest for certainty lies at the heart of human knowledge, yet even our most confident beliefs face challenging questions. The search for absolute truth has driven philosophy and science, but might be fundamentally impossible. Consider our most basic assumptions: the reliability of our senses, the existence of the external world, or the consistency of logic. While we rely on these daily, we cannot prove them without circular reasoning. Science, Our most successful method for understanding reality works with probabilities rather than absolutes. Scientific theories are always open to revision with new evidence. Our brains evolved for survival, not for perceiving absolute truth. Our cognitive biases and limitations suggest we might be fundamentally incapable of grasping absolute certainty. Yet the absence of absolute certainty doesn't mean we can't have reliable knowledge. Practical certainty, knowledge reliable enough for decision-making and progress, might be more valuable than theoretical absolute certainty. Perhaps the deepest insight is that the quest for absolute certainty might be misguided. Embracing probabilistic knowledge could lead to a more nuanced and accurate understanding of reality. Our moral values, universal truths, or human culture, thus vary by culture and time. The nature of morality presents one of philosophy's most practical yet challenging questions. It asks whether right and wrong exist independently of human judgment or are simply products of cultural evolution. Cultural diversity in moral values suggests moral relativism, the view that morality varies by culture and time. What's considered wrong in one society might be acceptable in another. Yet we find common moral themes across cultures: prohibitions against murder, importance of truth-telling, care for children. These universals might reflect deeper moral truths or shared human needs. Evolution provides another perspective. Moral instincts likely evolved to promote cooperation and survival. But does this evolutionary origin make morality subjective, or could it reflect objective moral truths? Some philosophers argue for moral realism, the view that moral facts exist independently of beliefs. Others suggest morality emerges from rational reflection on well-being and suffering. The profound insight might be that morality has both universal and relative aspects. Universal principles might exist, but their application varies by context and culture. Why does conscious experience end with death, and what happens to consciousness after death? Death represents the ultimate boundary of human experience, making questions about consciousness after death both compelling and challenging to approach scientifically. From a materialist perspective, consciousness appears to be an emergent property of brain activity. When the brain stops functioning, consciousness should cease, like a computer shutting down. Near-death experiences and similar phenomena suggest possibilities beyond simple cessation of consciousness. While these might be explained by brain activity during trauma, they raise questions about consciousness's relationship to physical processes. Various philosophical and religious traditions propose consciousness continues in some form after death through reincarnation, spiritual realms, or merger with a universal consciousness. Modern physics complicates traditional views of death and consciousness. If time is relative and all moments exist simultaneously, as some physics theories suggest, does consciousness really end at death? The deepest insight might be that our concepts of both consciousness and death are too limited. Understanding what happens after death might require new ways of thinking about consciousness and reality. What is the nature of time? Is it a fundamental property of the universe or a human construct? Time seems fundamental to existence, yet closer examination reveals it as perhaps reality's most puzzling aspect. Our experience of time flowing from past to future might not reflect time's true nature. Physics presents different pictures of time. Newton saw time as absolute and universal. Einstein revealed it as relative, varying with motion and gravity. Our subjective experience of time differs from physical time. We experience time's flow, yet physics equations work equally well forward or backward. Psychological time varies dramatically, flying by during enjoyment, crawling during boredom. This suggests our experience of time might be more constructed than we assume. The now moment seems special, yet physics suggests all moments might exist simultaneously in a block universe. The profound insight might be that time is neither purely objective nor purely subjective, but emerges from the interaction between consciousness and physical reality. Why does existence exist at all? Why is there something rather than nothing? This might be philosophy's most fundamental question. It asks not just about the universe's origin, but why there is any existence at all. Traditional answers often invoke a necessary being like God that must exist. But this raises further questions. Why must this being exist? Scientific explanations describe how our universe emerged, but can't fully address why anything exists to follow physical laws. Some philosophers suggest the question might be meaningless. Perhaps existence is simply the default state. Others argue that nothing might be logically impossible. Modern physics suggests our universe might be one of many in a multiverse, or that reality might be fundamentally mathematical. The deepest insight might be that our concepts of something and nothing are inadequate for understanding existence's ultimate nature. How does the concept of self emerge, and what maintains its continuity? The self appears to be our most intimate reality, yet trying to define or locate it reveals its mysterious nature. It's both the most certain and most elusive aspect of our existence. Modern neuroscience shows no central self-location in the brain. Instead, the self seems to be an emergent property arising from multiple neural networks working together. It's more like a story the brain tells itself than a fixed entity. Development psychology reveals how our sense of self emerges gradually in childhood through interaction with others and environment. We learn to recognize ourselves, develop autobiographical memory, and construct personal narratives. This suggests the self is largely a social and cultural construction. Yet, this constructed self feels deeply real and continuous. We maintain a sense of being the same person despite constant physical and mental changes. This continuity might be maintained through narrative. We constantly update our life story to maintain coherence. Buddhist philosophy suggests the self is an illusion, a useful fiction that helps us navigate life, but has no ultimate reality. Modern cognitive science increasingly supports this view, showing how our sense of unified selfhood is constructed moment by moment. The profound insight might be that the self is neither entirely real nor illusory, but rather a process, a dynamic pattern of organization that maintains itself through constant change. Can infinity exist in reality, or is it merely a mathematical concept? Infinity is a powerful mathematical tool, but its physical existence raises deep philosophical questions. While we can conceptualize infinity, finding it in reality proves challenging. Mathematics handles infinity elegantly, even distinguishing different sizes of infinity. But physical measurements always yield finite results. Even counting forever would never reach infinity, suggesting it might be purely conceptual. Modern physics presents mixed evidence. Some theories suggest infinite space or infinite universes, yet quantum mechanics indicates fundamental limits to physical quantities. The contradiction between infinite concepts and finite measurements remains unresolved. The human mind seems unable to truly comprehend infinity. We can define it mathematically, but cannot fully imagine it. This might reflect fundamental limits of consciousness, evolved to deal with finite quantities. Some philosophers argue that actually infinity cannot exist in reality, that what appears infinite might always be potentially rather than actually infinite. Others suggest our finite minds simply cannot grasp infinity's real existence. The deepest insight might be that infinity reveals the limits of human cognition and the gap between mathematical abstractions and physical reality. It might represent a horizon of understanding rather than a property of reality itself. I have believed in a higher power rational given our current scientific understanding. This question examines whether religious or spiritual beliefs can be rationally justified in an age of scientific explanation. It touches on the relationship between reason and faith, evidence and experience. Science explains many phenomena once attributed to divine action, suggesting a God of the gaps grows smaller with scientific progress. Yet science also reveals a universe of profound mystery and complexity, potentially compatible with spiritual perspectives. The complexity and apparent fine-tuning of physical constants might suggest design. However, multiverse theories offer naturalistic explanations for apparent fine-tuning. The question becomes whether simplicity or complexity better supports belief. Personal religious experience provides compelling evidence for individuals, but remains subjective and culturally influenced. The challenge is weighing personal experience against objective evidence, informing rational beliefs. Some argue that religious belief serves valuable psychological and social functions regardless of its literal truth. Others suggest that rationality itself might have limits when approaching ultimate questions. That the profound insight might be that the rationality of religious belief depends on how we define rationality itself. Different forms of reasoning might apply to different domains of human experience. What is the relationship between mind and body, and can one exist without the other? The mind-body problem explores the connection between mental and physical aspects of existence. It questions whether consciousness requires a physical brain, and how mental states relate to physical processes. Traditional dualism sees mind and body as distinct substances, but struggles to explain their interaction. Modern materialism views the mind as emerging from brain activity, but can't fully explain subjective experience. Evidence suggests tight coupling between mental and physical states. Brain damage affects consciousness, drugs alter mental states, and thoughts influence physical health. Yet the nature of this connection remains mysterious. Some philosophers propose panpsychism, the view that consciousness is fundamental to reality, present in all matter to some degree. This could explain consciousness's emergence, but raises other philosophical challenges. Artificial intelligence raises new questions about mind-body relationships. Could consciousness exist in non-biological substrates? What physical properties are necessary for consciousness to emerge? The deepest insight might be that mind and body are not two separate things, but different aspects of a more fundamental reality we don't yet understand. Their apparent separation might reflect limitations in human perception rather than reality's true nature.